So it started when my two entitled sisters decided they had the right to use my vacation house as a rental to make some cash. I told them no, obviously. That didn't sit well with them, and somehow their genius solution was to have their husbands break in. Yep, break in. They got caught, and now they're both dealing with legal trouble. That literally happened today. Now, on top of all that, my parents thought it'd be a good idea to throw a barbecue because I guess that's just how older folks like to mark the occasion. I wasn't really feeling it. I've never gotten along with my sisters, their husbands, or their kids, and my wife and I chose not to have children. So we weren't exactly eager to spend the day in a backyard full of chaos. But then my mom started pressuring my wife, and long story short, we caved and showed up. By the time we rolled in, there were already around 20 people hanging out. My sisters and their husbands were already well on their way to being drunk, if not already there. My mom was completely focused on trying to manage the pack of nieces and nephews, all somewhere between 8 and 12 years old, trying to keep them from setting the place on fire. My dad had wisely disappeared into the hot tub with a small cooler full of lemonade. Man knows how to survive a family gathering. My wife and I kept things chill. We made some small talk with random guests, grabbed a bite, and sipped on frozen margaritas. Meanwhile, the sisters and Bills, I call my brothers-in-law Bills, kept taking jabs at us. We were apparently late, not dressed to swim, and somehow ruining the whole vibe. Classic suburban backyard drama. Anyway, about 55 minutes into this circus, two of the kids charged at one of the guests, some neighbor lady standing near the pool, and shoved her toward the water. She was at the steps, caught herself just in time, and only got partially soaked. You could tell she was pissed, but she handled it like a champ. Didn't say much, just grabbed some towels, dried off, and left. Meanwhile, my sisters and their husbands thought the whole thing was hilarious. Total comedy gold to them. Not long after, I was chatting with someone a few feet away from the pool when I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. 3 of the kids were charging straight at me. Guess I was their next target. Now, it's not exactly hard to outsmart a bunch of sugar-crazed kids, so I just stepped aside at the last second. They missed me entirely and went flying into the pool at full speed. Everyone else, myself and my wife included, burst out laughing. It was genuinely funny until it suddenly wasn't. Their moms, still plenty drunk, absolutely lost it. Turns out, 2 of the kids couldn't even swim, despite being in swimsuits. I wasn't in swimwear myself, so I stepped back and let someone else handle it. Thankfully, a few adults jumped in and got them out quickly. The kids were crying like they just lost a limb. Total meltdown. That's when everything really blew up. The 4 drunk parents started screaming at everyone, but especially at me. They were furious that I almost let their kids drown, and on top of that, 2 of the kids had been filming the whole thing on their parents' iPhones, which were now sitting at the bottom of the pool. One of my brothers-in-law tried diving in to retrieve the phones, but let's just say his body fat percentage and blood alcohol level weren't doing him any favors. No one else was exactly racing to help out either, probably because my sisters wouldn't stop yelling at everyone. I finally told them straight up it's their job to keep an eye on their kids. If something had gone wrong, it would have been on them, not me. Things got pretty heated after that. Lots of raised voices, a few choice words. My wife and I decided we'd had enough and left right after one of the Bills tripped over himself while yelling and face-planted. Real classy exit. Now the whole gang's saying I should have just let the kids push me in and have their fun, even if that meant trashing my phone. No thanks. For what it's worth, my dad never once left the hot tub. Just chilled with a lemonade, watching the chaos unfold like it was a live TV show. Some final thoughts from me. Yeah, I get that they're just kids and they were probably just trying to have fun. But the fact that they thought this kind of thing was okay says a lot more about how they're being raised than anything else. Honestly, I wish we hadn't gone. I love seeing my parents and their neighbors, but I can't stand being around my sisters and their husbands. They've always been jealous of how my wife and I live, and it shows. Being around them is just draining. Why I don't vibe with my family. It's not that anything dramatic happened between us, it's just always felt like oil and water. My sisters are quite a bit older than me, 8 and 10 years, and we never really connected growing up. I've never had much in common with their husbands either. They're not bad guys, but we just don't care about the same stuff. They're more into things I couldn't care less about, and the feeling's probably mutual. Even though both couples are doing fine financially, one of the husbands even makes more than I do. My wife and I are professionals, child-free, and pretty smart with our money. That means we've built up some solid investments, take nice trips every year, and don't drive cars that smell like juice boxes and goldfish crackers. That difference clearly grates on them. So we get this steady stream of petty jabs and resentment, and frankly, it's exhausting. That's why I wanted to skip the whole barbecue in the first place. Just not worth the headache. My wife's a lot more easygoing and forgiving than I am when it comes to my family, and she was actually looking forward to seeing them. But judging by what she said on the way home, I think she's hit her limit too. Final note. Yeah, my dad's awesome. Super laid-back, people person used to work in sales. He's loving the retired life and doesn't let anything rattle him. Just sat there with two of his buddies, watching the mess unfold like it was entertainment. My mom's great too, but she was clearly stressed out by the whole situation. And the kids? They're fine. By the time we left, they were inside, glued to the TV like nothing happened. I think the kids are around 8, 10, 10, 10, and 12. It was the three in the middle, the 10-year-old and the two 10-year-olds who pulled the kamikaze stunt on me. Pretty sure the 12-year-old was behind it though. She's usually the one calling the shots and getting the others riled up. Someone mentioned I phrased the part about my parents throwing a barbecue kind of strangely. Yeah, I had to cut some stuff out to fit everything into the original post. But the gist is, my folks are super outgoing. They love hosting, always have. Their house is basically made for entertaining, big yard, pool, the works, and they're always finding an excuse to bring people together. They'd originally planned to have the whole crew over for the 4th of July, but one of my sisters and her family were off on vacation. So this whole thing ended up being a fake 4th party. Still had the red, white, and blue decor, barbecue food, margarita machine, flags everywhere, full setup. The kids had been promised sparklers. Funny thing is, my nieces and nephews were the only kids there. All the neighbors are my parents' age, older, quiet, mostly retired folks. So first off, my parents later told me that all of the kids except maybe the 8-year-old actually can swim. They use the pool all the time. The youngest one's still learning, but he loves the water and is comfortable in it. My sister just said they couldn't swim in the heat of the moment to make me look bad. Real classy move. To be fair, the kids aren't allowed in the deep end, which is exactly where they ended up when they tried to push me. Again, it was the 10-year-old and the two 10-year-olds who went for it. After my wife and I left that day, the whole party kind of crashed and burned. My brother-in-law, the one who face-planted while yelling, ended up needing stitches. He was too drunk to drive, so my dad had to take him to urgent care. Let's just say Dad wasn't exactly thrilled about that. Later that night, my sisters started blowing up the family group chat, firing off all kinds of nasty messages. Their husbands chimed in too, because of course they did. My wife and I decided we'd had enough, so we just blocked all 4 of them. My mom called the next day. She was really upset. She and Dad were in the chat and saw everything that was said. Can't blame her for being shaken by it. Because of the group text mess, my parents told my sisters and their husbands they needed to come over the next day, no kids allowed. Mom said they wanted to lay down some ground rules, which I thought was putting it mildly. Anyway, the result was a half-hearted, awkward apology delivered through my mom's phone. She held it up on speaker while my siblings mumbled something that vaguely sounded like, sorry. I'm really glad my wife was sitting next to me when the call came through. Her death stares kept me from saying the stuff I wanted to say. I just told them thanks. No need to discuss it further. That was it. Since I figured things had cooled down, I went ahead and unblocked them. That evening, I get a text from one of the brothers-in-law asking when I was going to cough up the money for their phones. Apparently they cost 4x. I don't know if that meant 400 or 4,000, and frankly I didn't care. I just texted back, never. Took a screenshot of his message and sent it to my parents with a note saying we were officially done dealing with this nonsense. I told them we were going no contact with my sisters and their husbands and to please not invite us to any future holidays or family events if they're going to be there. Then we blocked them. Again. That's when things really blew up. My dad got on the phone and gave them an earful. Tore into them like I've never seen. Among other things, he told them the grandkids were no longer welcome at their house, at least for the foreseeable future. That stung, especially since my mom babysits for free pretty often. You could practically hear the panic through the phone. He also dropped another bomb. Told them flat out that my wife and I actually own the vacation house. Not him and Mom. That completely threw them. They've been using the place like it's a shared family cabin. Bringing their friends up for weekend trips. Treating it like a timeshare they didn't pay for. So finding out they had zero claim to it? That hit hard. My folks don't usually draw such hard lines, so you know they were fed up. For context, we bought that cabin for my parents. It was something they'd always dreamed about, having a place up in the mountains. But we kept the ownership under wraps just to avoid drama with my siblings. Guess that worked. Until it didn't. A couple days later, Both sisters and their husbands showed up at our house. Uninvited. We weren't home, we were out for dinner. They left a note. One of my sisters even called me at work. I let it go to voicemail. We'd already decided we were sticking with no contact for the time being, and it's been over 3 weeks since we last spoke to them. Honestly, I'm good with it. They can go pound sand. How life's been since. Honestly, it's been peaceful. Really peaceful. It's only been a few weeks, but not having them around has made a noticeable difference. I hadn't realized how much low-level drama they kept in the air, all the time. Not full-on toxic or anything, they're not bad people, but they are petty, exhausting, and just kind of annoying. And for the record, I don't care if they use the cabin or not. Technically, it's ours. But it was bought for my parents, and they're the ones who decide who uses it. We pay the taxes and the maintenance, but the cabin is for them to enjoy, and it's their call who gets to go there when they're not using it. One upside of all this drama is that it gave us some clarity about what we'll do with the place in the future. I'd always assumed I'd just take over managing it someday, handling scheduling, keeping it in shape, that sort of thing. But now, we'll just sell it. And if we want mountain time, we'll rent an Airbnb like normal people. About my parents, yeah, they're smart folks. They're pretty relaxed overall. Very live and let live. I figure they'll ease up eventually when things settle down. But that's up to them. As for us, we won't be attending any more family events for the foreseeable future. What's got my sisters really rattled is the idea that I might block them from the cabin long term. But I won't. That's not my decision. It's up to my parents for as long as they're still using it. Still, the fallout definitely killed one of my sister's long-standing fantasies. She dreamed of building a little family compound up there, like 3 houses on the same land for when we inherited it. I knew about that pipe dream for a while and just kept ignoring it. Thing is, the property could support something like that. It's big, sits at the end of a road with room for a few houses, all with killer views. But that's not gonna happen. As for their apologies, they don't mean them. I agree with anyone saying they're only trying to smooth things over to get what they want. I don't believe they're genuinely sorry, and I have zero plans to see or talk to them again anytime soon. When it comes to the vacation house, yeah, I technically own it and cover all the expenses, but my parents are the ones who call the shots. I bought it for them, plain and simple. They've always dreamed of having a mountain retreat for the family, but there's no way they ever could have afforded it on their own. I've been fortunate financially, been smart about saving, invested hard, and got a huge bonus the same year I sold my old place and moved in with my now wife. I don't really care if my parents let my sisters use the house. It's theirs to enjoy. That said, I'd be lying if I said I didn't get a little satisfaction from the fact that my sisters just recently found out I was the one who bought it, and that I never told them. The fact that I could afford to buy a mountain property and hand it over to our parents without making a big deal out of it? Yeah, that clearly messed with them. Especially because I never said a word about it. Dad went ahead and changed the lock code last week when they went up there, so now only the 4 of us, him, Mom, my wife, and me, have access. As for my mom babysitting, she told me that she and Dad have still been going over to each sister's place about once a week to spend time with the grandkids. Once school starts, she plans to pick each set up 1 day a week, on separate days, and hang out with them through the evening. She said having all 5 of them together is overwhelming, but 1 batch at a time? Manageable. Both of my parents have said they don't plan on inviting my sisters or their families back to the house anytime soon, and they've been enjoying the peace and quiet that comes with that decision. My guess? They were already burned out on the old dynamic and just used the whole pool party fiasco as a reason to finally set some boundaries. Funny side note, my original post got removed from the ATA subreddit. According to the message I got from one of the mods, it was because of violence, which I guess meant the phones getting ruined in the pool. Not sure how that qualifies, but whatever. Phew. I thought things had already gone sideways, but this past week has been next level. What I thought was the full meltdown turned out to just be the warm-up. To understand what's been happening, you kinda need the financial background. My parents have never been great with money. I've been helping them with their taxes for years, so I know exactly where things stand. Their house is paid off, and they don't have much debt, but they also didn't stash away much for retirement. They both get Social Security, Dad has a pretty solid pension, and they've got some savings, but we're not talking buried treasure here. I actually bought them their current car as a retirement gift. First car in like 20 years that wasn't leased. I just wanted them to have something decent to drive. Now, my sisters have always operated under the assumption that our parents are secretly rich, that they'll inherit everything one day and don't need to worry about money. Since I'm doing fine financially, they figured I didn't need anything and that they'd be the ones cashing in. So, they've never bothered to save either. Well, surprise, turns out my older sister and her husband are in deep financial trouble. They've got 3 kids and have been living way beyond their means for a while. Their credit cards are maxed out, they're months behind on their car leases, and one vehicle is on the verge of being repossessed. He'd always bragged about making some big salary, but apparently it's been half that all along. Earlier this week, my sister came clean to my mom. Told her everything because she needed a loan. Oh, and here's the real kicker. For the last 3 years, she's been secretly renting out the vacation house once a month or so, pocketing the money. We're talking $2,000 for a weekend, maybe $4,000 for a full week. Now that she's been banned from using the place, she's had to cancel at least one upcoming booking. She's freaking out that they're going to lose everything. Naturally, my parents aren't in a position to loan them any serious money. Apparently, my other sister knew about the whole rental scheme but never said a word. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she was doing it too. One time I went up to the house to drop off an ATV I'd been working on, and there was a whole family staying there. They told me they were friends of my sister, said she and her family had just gone into town. At the time, I brushed it off and assumed she'd just let some friends use the place. But now? Yeah, I'm rethinking that. Mom and Dad are both pretty stressed about all this. Mom especially. Dad's more just pissed. He feels betrayed, I think, and probably a little embarrassed that he can't help his daughter out financially. He told me flat out that as long as it's up to him, neither of my sisters will be using the cabin again. They also gave me the heads up because they figured the sisters would come after me next. They weren't wrong. On Thursday, both of them showed up at our place again, this time without their husbands. They waited outside until I got home. I had 3 choices: fight with them in the front yard, walk past and let them scream at my back, or let them in to say their piece. I chose the third. So they come in and I get this half-baked sob story from my older sister with the younger one chiming in. They wanted me to let them start using the cabin again immediately. Then they dropped the real ask. They told me I've been a crappy brother and that it's time I stepped up and started paying for their kids' college. That's what family does, they said. I let them get through their speech, then I hit back, point by point, with everything my parents had told me. That's when the fireworks really started. Denials, tears, screaming, swearing, you name it. I still feel like my ears are ringing from the noise. And yeah, I said some harsh stuff. Mean, even. But it was all true and they needed to hear it. They finally left about an hour later. I took a long shower and crashed for a while. When I got up, my wife was home. First thing she says is, I had to block more numbers, your sisters are blowing up our phones from new ones. Yesterday, I got a message from my parents asking me to call. I'm guessing they've heard some version of the story from my sisters, no doubt a twisted one, but honestly, I'm not ready to rehash it all yet. I'm usually a pretty high-energy guy, but this whole mess with my family has worn me down in a way I didn't expect. I had just enough gas in the tank the other day to drive up to the vacation house and put a padlock on the entrance gate. Heavy-duty chain, best lock I could find. And now? I'm the only one with a key. That should be enough to keep my siblings out, especially since there's a 400-yard uphill walk from the road to the house. They'd probably rather die than hike that distance. Yep, here's another update about the never-ending soap opera that is my extended family. After my sisters showed up at my place that last time, my parents pulled me aside and told me they were officially done managing the vacation home. Apparently, my sisters had started pushing them again, trying to get back in their good graces and angle for more time at the cabin. So my folks handed the whole thing over to me. Said it's my problem now. Up until then, they'd been the ones keeping track of who used the place when, making sure things got fixed or replaced, all that stuff. But now? They're stepping out of the middle. Can't say I blame them, but I was still disappointed. The whole point of the house was for them to enjoy it. And they've always used it regularly. I never had an issue with them letting my sisters' families use it either. I mean, yeah, I own the place on paper, but I always saw it as my parents' call. Now though, with the control handed back to me, it changes everything. So I've taken steps. Locked the front gate, as mentioned. Then I reset all the keypads on the doors and created brand new entry codes. Yesterday, I had security cameras installed, surprisingly cool setup, actually. The installer talked me into adding a high-angle camera that overlooks the valley, which honestly has an amazing view. Whole system cost more than I expected, but honestly, worth every penny for the peace of mind. The installer also put up signs around the property saying the place is under 24/8 video surveillance. I even went so far as to install a lockout on the water shutoff valve. Not kidding, it's a beast. If I ever lose the key, it's going to be a nightmare to remove. Right now, only my wife and I know it's locked and only we have the keys. Last week, I got separate calls at my office from both of the brothers-in-law. Each of them tried a different angle to get back in the house. The older one had already driven up there for a guy's weekend with some of his buddies only to find himself locked out. He was not happy about it. Embarrassed, angry, and clearly hoping to bully his way back in. He bounced between acting aggressive and playing the victim. At one point, he actually threatened to rip the gate out of the ground. He also admitted they'd been renting the house out to friends to make money and now I was ruining their business. Told me I should refund the guests he'd booked. Yeah, okay, buddy. Like hell I'm doing that. Honestly, I wish I'd recorded the call, but I was at the office and I have no idea how to do that on a landline. The other bill sounded like he was only calling because my sister made him. He didn't argue much when I told him they were permanently done using the place. That conversation was short. I made it clear to both of them the answer is no. Don't ask again. At this point, I'm seriously considering selling the cabin. My wife and I don't use it enough to make it worthwhile, and with all this family drama, it's not like we're going to be hosting any big get-togethers up there anytime soon. I brought up the idea with my parents, and their reaction was basically a shrug. Whatever you want. I'd more than double my money if I sold it. The place sits on 3 lots with killer views at the end of a private road. It's prime real estate, but I'll probably wait a while before I do anything. Selling now would be an emotional decision, and I don't want to act out of frustration. As for my sisters, we're not speaking. I have no plans to reach out. I don't know where things stand between them and my parents, and honestly, I don't want to know. On the upside, we had dinner with my folks last week. Tried out a new restaurant. It was nice. Nobody mentioned the drama. My mom gave us a quick update on the nieces and nephews. She's still seeing them at their houses. No cabin talk. No yelling. No guilt tripping. Just a peaceful dinner. Sorry if this update isn't full of juicy drama or satisfying clapbacks. Sometimes life is just quiet. And that's exactly what I needed. Some folks asked for another update, so here it is. I ended up hiring a local guy to look after the cabin. He lives nearby, takes care of his aging parents, and already manages a bunch of vacation homes and weekend properties in the area. He's chill, knows what he's doing, and honestly, I think he might have the best job in the world. He drives around with his dog, does walkthroughs on different properties, hangs out on people's decks, and gets paid for it. He's got access to my camera feeds and does a physical check on the house every week or two. There's also a second camera setup. He has access to one mounted on a house near the start of the private road. It takes still shots every time a vehicle drives past. Pretty clever. All in, I'm paying him $450 a month, and that covers basic maintenance and minor repairs as needed. And he's well connected, knows all the sheriff's deputies in the area. That gives me a little extra peace of mind. Every week or so, he sends out photos from his property checks. Sometimes just pictures from his walk. Kind of a nice bonus. Had dinner with my parents tonight. They're doing good. And I've got to hand it to them. They've handled all this drama pretty gracefully. They told me my sisters have been pressuring them to demand that I open up the vacation house to everyone for Thanksgiving. Yeah, that's not happening. Thanksgiving up at the vacation place had kind of become a tradition for the family, just not for me and my wife. In the past 7 years, we've only gone once. So, not exactly something we've been a part of. This year, my dad didn't even bother asking us. He already knew I'd say no. Instead, my parents came up with a pretty decent plan. They told everyone they'd be organizing Thanksgiving this time around, and if people wanted to do it in the mountains, they'd rent an Airbnb, but everyone had to pitch in and pay their share up front. Otherwise, it'd either be hosted at their place or one of the sisters' houses. Naturally, this sparked a fight between my sisters. The middle one was all for the Airbnb plan, but the oldest flat out couldn't afford it. The deadline to commit came and went, so now Thanksgiving's going to be at my parents' house. Doesn't matter either way, we're not going. My parents asked me not to sell the vacation house just yet. They said they'd still like to use it now and then, just not until my sisters get used to the new dynamic. Deep down, I think they're hoping the family might all come together there again someday. But that's not gonna happen. Not in this lifetime. Honestly, I'd rather just sell the place and be done with it. But if my folks want to use it from time to time, I can live with that. Besides, it's only going to be worth more down the line. My wife and I are still completely no contact with my sisters and their husbands. Both of my sisters have tried calling us using new numbers. Gotta love Google Voice for making that possible. They've left voicemails insisting we meet up to figure out a fair way for everyone to use the family vacation home. They even called my wife. Thankfully, I already have a habit of ignoring calls from numbers I don't recognize. Whether they actually believe they can convince me, or they're just trying to guilt me into giving in, I have no idea. And honestly, I don't care. My parents told me the older sister and her husband are finally having to face reality. They're getting out of the leases on their SUV and their massive truck, selling off their jet skis and other junk they never needed but loved to show off. That's going to hit my sister hard. She's always been a bragger, and I doubt she's ready to be seen in anything smaller, older, or less flashy. And her husband? His entire identity is tied to his truck. The guy even has a tattoo of the truck brand's logo. One of many reasons why we've never hung out. A bunch of people have suggested I turn the vacation place into an Airbnb. Sure, it'd bring in some money, but I'm not doing that. At least not anytime soon. It would stir up a ton of drama in the family, and more importantly, it'd stress out my parents. They don't need that kind of tension. Besides, the cabin still has a lot of personal stuff from my folks, and there's really nowhere else to put it. Renting it out would mean dealing with wear and tear, managing bookings, and even with a property manager, it'd still take up more of my time than I want to give. Just not worth the headache. Everything has gone completely off the rails. Honestly, I never thought things would go this far. Short version. My brothers-in-law broke into the vacation home, and they got arrested. They're facing charges for breaking and entering, destruction of property, and making threats. All Class 1 misdemeanors. I've refused to drop the charges. I might consider it if they cover the full cost of the damage. But I'm not holding my breath. As of Saturday evening, they were still sitting in jail. I assume they're out now, but I haven't checked. Things had seemed to quiet down. I hadn't seen or heard from my sisters in over 6 weeks. My parents went up to the house for a week and had a great time. Christian, the property manager I hired, has been excellent. He's taken care of a couple of repairs and has a list of small projects he's working through. He even sends out weekly photos of sunsets or wildlife from his property rounds. Honestly, it was starting to make me miss the place. Then Friday happened, day after Thanksgiving. Turns out the Bills, both of them, drove up to the cabin and used an angle grinder to cut through the gate chain. They damaged the gate too. They tried breaking in through the front door, trashed the lock set, scratched the hell out of the door. When that didn't work, they got in through the utility floor and an interior locked door. They even broke into the barn. I have no idea why. When they walked out the front door, they were greeted by sheriff's deputies and Christian. See, the camera system I installed sends notifications when there's activity. Christian got the alert, checked the footage, and immediately called the sheriff's department. He beat them there and stayed until they arrived. From what he told me, the Bills tried to talk their way out of it, but the deputies weren't buying any of it. Up there, breaking into an unoccupied cabin is a big deal. Most of the time, it's meth heads stealing and pawning everything they can get their hands on. And when the Bills got arrested, they lost it. Started shouting about how they were going to beat the crap out of me, which, by the way, is not something you want to yell in front of cops. Christian and the deputies both tried calling my wife and me to ask how we wanted to handle it, but we were spending the day with her family. Phones were in the car, we were fully in vacation mode. So the sheriff's office did what they had to do and booked the Bills on all charges. Exactly what I would have asked for anyway. Once they were in jail, they called their wives, who naturally freaked out. My sisters called my parents, tried to call me, they're still blocked, and tried finding a local lawyer to post bail. Problem is, it's a rural area and it was a holiday weekend. Not exactly ideal timing. My older sister doesn't have a dime to her name, cards are maxed out. If their husbands made bail, it would have had to come out of my middle sister's pocket. As of Saturday afternoon, both of them were still locked up. We didn't check our phones until late Friday on the drive back from spending the day with my in-laws. We were in a good mood, had a relaxing day, just fully unplugged. That lasted right up until I glanced at my phone and saw the mountain of missed calls and messages from my mom, dad, Christian, and even the sheriff's department. Talk about a vibe killer. My wife started going through everything: texts, voicemails, and reading them out loud while I drove. By the time we pulled into our driveway, I had a rough idea of what happened and I was already seething. Tried to get my brain into problem-solving mode and move past the anger, but nope, couldn't do it. I called Christian first and got the full story. He laid out all the damage, what had happened, how it unfolded, and it just made me even angrier. I ended the day by calling the sheriff's department myself and told them there was no mistake. My brothers-in-law had absolutely no right to be on the property. I wanted charges pressed, period. I didn't return my parents' calls. I couldn't. I barely slept that night. Saturday afternoon, I finally called them back. They were both rattled, especially my mom. My sisters had apparently worn them down, pressuring them to ask me to tell the police it was all just a misunderstanding and to drop the charges. I shut that down immediately. Told them there was no way I'd even consider it until I talked to an attorney and was fully reimbursed for every last bit of damage, 100%. Mom was in tears by the time we ended the call, which, yeah, made me feel like crap. Dad floated the idea of starting fresh, but even he admitted the bills needed to pay for what they'd done. I appreciated his honesty at least. I haven't gone up to the house yet. Just seeing the photos was enough to set me off. I don't think I'm ready to walk through it in person, I'll lose it. Hoping to get up there tomorrow or Wednesday, but work's slammed right now and I can't just disappear for non-emergencies. I've left messages with 2 attorney friends, hoping they can point me towards someone who knows how to handle this: restraining orders, civil suits, whatever I'm legally able to do. I've got all the threatening texts they've sent over the months and I'm seriously considering suing them for the money they made by illegally renting out the place. I don't care about the cash, it's just about making sure they suffer some real consequences. At this point, the gloves are off. Couple of extra things. Turns out the Bills had no clue I'd hired someone to monitor the place or that I'd installed cameras. My parents knew but never said anything because, in their words, it would have just given my sisters another excuse to stir up drama. But it's not like the signs were subtle. There are big, clear signs around the property monitored by video surveillance: private property, no trespassing. Not hard to miss. As for my wife, she's done. She's been ridiculously patient through all this, way more than I probably deserved, but she's officially reached her limit. She told me straight up that this is my fight now. She's not getting involved. I get it. She did say one thing that stuck with me though: they need to learn a lesson. A hard one. She's right. Apparently, the older Bill probably won't face job consequences over this, but the middle one has a security clearance, which could complicate things for him. I'm hoping that lights a fire under him to pay up quickly. Funny side note, Christian, the caretaker, has a more interesting backstory than I realized. I knew he was friends with the local deputies, thought it was just a small town thing. Turns out he was a cop in a major city for years. Got shot on the job. After that he left the force and moved out here to be near his retired parents. He's got some PTSD from the whole ordeal, and his dog? Certified service animal. Guess that explains why his friend group includes so many folks in law enforcement. Solid guy, and I'm beyond lucky to have him watching over the place. At this point, I don't want to see or speak to my sisters or their husbands ever again. And yeah, I know that conflicts with my burning desire to make their lives as difficult as possible, but both feelings exist at the same time. My wife wants nothing more to do with this mess. She's done engaging. She'll still listen when I need to vent, but she's keeping her distance. One last theory: why they broke in, I can't say for sure, but I think they were planning to use the cabin for another family getaway and maybe even rent it out again. Christian mentioned it's deer season through the end of the year, and I know the Bills have used the place before as a hunting base for big group events. It sleeps a lot of people, and one solid rental weekend could bring in thousands. That might also explain why they broke into the barn. I've got a 6-seater mule ATV up there, and I bet they wanted to use it. I don't think they were looking to destroy the place. They know how much it means to my dad, and they've always liked him. But that doesn't change the fact that they broke in, damaged my property, and crossed the line in every possible way. Didn't think I'd be posting again so soon, but things took another unexpected turn. Thursday afternoon, a courier delivered an envelope to my office. Inside was a signed letter from both brothers-in-law and a cashier's check for $5,000. And here's the weird part: the letter was sincere. Like really sincere. They owned up to everything: breaking in, damaging the property, the whole bit. Said they knew it was wrong. Said the $5,000 was to cover the damage and they'd pay more if needed. They also promised to stay away from the cabin unless my wife and I personally invited them. They asked, not demanded, that I consider helping get the charges dropped as soon as possible since both of their jobs might be on the line. They even said they'd comply with a restraining order or whatever else it took. There was more in the letter too, all in the same tone. Apologetic. Respectful. I'll be honest, I didn't expect that. To say I was blindsided would be putting it mildly. This was the last thing I expected. After everything they pulled, getting a hand-delivered envelope with an apology letter and a cashier's check inside felt like something out of a weird dream, or maybe an alternate universe. I'd already lined up a meeting with an attorney. The plan was to sue the Bills for damages and start the process for a restraining order. When I got the envelope, I called the lawyer right away. Told him what had just shown up at my office. He moved my appointment up, said come in today, and also told me not to cash the check yet. We sat down for a long conversation. 2 hours, give or take. His advice was to skip the courtroom drama and go the route of a settlement agreement, a clean break. He explained that yes, if we took this to court, we'd almost certainly win. But lawsuits drag on for years, rack up huge legal fees, and even if we got a judgment, there's no guarantee we'd ever see a dime. Meanwhile, we'd be stuck living in that stress. He said the $5,000? Ours to keep, no strings attached, even if we didn't forgive them. But if we wanted to wrap this up cleanly, the better move was to draft a full release agreement that includes language preventing future contact. Basically a civil no-contact order. He's working on that now. Should have the paperwork done by Monday. I'd already asked Christian, our property manager, to get me a full estimate for the repairs. Called him after the meeting, told him I needed it fast. He came through $4,000 give or take. Most of it is to replace the destroyed front door. By Friday, my lawyer had contacted both of the Bills. He explained the proposal and told them straight up they should get their own attorneys. Both agreed, but one of them, the middle Bill, admitted that they couldn't afford a lawyer and pay for the damage. He said there was no point in dragging it out in court since they had no defense anyway. His biggest concern wasn't the money, it was whether the charges could be dropped. From what I'm seeing, they're desperate. Like, genuinely ready to sign whatever's put in front of them just to make this disappear and go back to normal. But there's no going back, not for me. My attorney also reached out to the DA's office, left a message for the prosecutor handling the case. He thinks there's a decent shot they'll agree to drop the charges, since the Bills are paying for everything and have no criminal records, but nothing's confirmed yet. He told me to be ready to head up there in person early next week and tell the prosecutor directly that I want the charges dropped if that's what I decide. One thing he was firm on, no contact with my sisters or their husbands, especially over the next 6 months. He said if we do go through with the agreement, sticking to the terms exactly is non-negotiable. Any future contact could blow up the whole deal. I don't know if the sudden remorse from the Bills is about guilt or just cold fear. Probably the second one. They finally realized what they stood to lose: jobs, reputations, the possibility, even if small, of jail time. And in the middle Bill's case, his security clearance could vanish if this drags out. So yeah, this is their Hail Mary to try to patch their lives back together before everything completely falls apart. This doesn't fix everything. Not even close. But it does clear the legal and financial mess off my plate, and that's something. I'm under no illusion that we'll ever be on speaking terms again, and frankly, I'm okay with that. What I want more than anything is to just put this behind me. Close the book, lock the door, and walk away. I'm completely drained. My wife feels the same. We're both just tired, mentally, emotionally, all of it. One thing I didn't expect, though? That apology letter hit me harder than I thought it would. Weird, right? I figured I'd just be cynical about it, but something about reading them actually admit they were wrong. I don't know. It landed. The money's fine. It'll cover the repairs. But in the moment, it didn't feel like the most important thing. That letter, as simple as it was, carried more weight than I expected. Pretty sure it was my middle sister and her husband who scraped the money together. Makes sense. They've always had a better grip on reality, even if they don't always act like it.